Good morning, all of you, and thank you, Secretary. That was a wonderful speech. You covered so much in about just over 30 minutes. You touched upon many areas, from technology to strategy to terrorism to diversity, and I think we can have like an IIT session, but that'll take a couple of hours. We have limited time. So first of all, the rules. The rules, I will start this conversation, maybe with a question or a question and a half, and then all of you are welcome to join in. Raise your hand, and somebody will come to you with a microphone. I will tell you a secret. I know there are many journalists here. I've been told not to give you any questions, right? That's not true. That's not true, but I would prefer questions from students, because that's what the Secretary would prefer, and journalists get their chances anyway. So please feel free, ask questions about anything, and please keep them very short, because we have limited time. The shorter your questions, the longer the answer we can expect to get, and we can get more questions in. Now, I don't have to summarize the Secretary's talk. Thank you very much for coming to IIT in my neighborhood, which is not a coincidence, because I think they figured that I was the best person to ask to come to this, because the Americans knew the weather, right? So at least I could walk across if I needed to, because I live in a neighborhood where the market.
I knew I'd have an audience of one.
I live in a neighborhood where a barber shop offers 20% discount to IIT students. Not much use to me anyway. So thank you very much for being here. You talked about many things that we worry about, and many things we worry about jointly. You also talked about mistakes that we all make, and you said some of the mistakes have been beauties. So the big concern, which could be a shared concern between America and India, how much do we worry about the most beauteous of all beautiful mistakes that America might commit later this year by electing Donald Trump? And if you think that...
I did not set that up. I did not set that up. I have nothing to do with that. I'm not involved in politics. I can't comment on the election, so I can't. No election questions, folks. You have to rely on the good judgment of the American people, period.
Well, I knew you will say that, but America's internal affairs are now everybody's internal affairs. Because irrespective of who wins, let me put it.
And when I ran for president, I wish that everybody could have voted.
Well, I think you should ask Indians to vote this time, we'll be better off. But irrespective of who wins, we need to worry about the fact that this kind of polarization has influenced and persuaded so many Americans, because this is now spreading all over the world. All our societies are getting polarized. Is that a joint concern?
Well, polarization anywhere is not good, and the world, there's too much polarization in too many places in the world. There's no question about it. Polarization is the opposite of everything I just talked about. It reflects intolerance. It reflects a frustration with governance. And in fairness, I mean, the one comment I will make is, as a member of Congress, and I've seen the transition in the Congress in the last years, is that there are a lot of people in the United States even who, as in other countries, are angry because they don't see governance moving fast enough to deal with many of the problems that exist in the world. And so it's not a unique thing to us at all. This is on a global basis. You're seeing governance challenged, and people are demanding, and it's understandable. In the age of information, when people have quicker and more access instantaneously to everything going on, there's a double edge, there's more probably than even a double edge, but it's a challenge because, for one thing, I think there's much more information than an awful lot of people can process. Secondly, a lot of it is not that valuable or important information. It's just sort of, whatever, the amount of texting and amount of time taken to manage your smartphone these days You ought to stop and question the productivity level of all of that. In many cases, it increases it, but in a lot of cases, it moves in the opposite direction. The other side is that we need all of us to think about how we're going to deliver services and decisions to people faster and more effectively. And everybody can improve on the way we are doing these things. So it's a big challenge.
Are you worried about the way American mind has shifted or American mind has moved? Because a lot of the world takes its cue from there.
Well, I'm not sure which way you're saying it's shifted. Again, I don't want to get in. I just don't want to get into a road that begins to be interpreted as my commenting on the politics of the country right now. I think what is happening is a very open debate. There are no words being hidden. Everybody is seeing what each person is saying. It's a pretty unvarnished, all-out slugfest in open, for everybody to make judgments about. And there's something, in the end, I'd rather see that than what I see in some countries where if somebody said half of what's been said in America, you'd be in jail or thrown out so America, our politics historically have always been pretty rough and tumble. And you can go back to the late 1800s, go back and look at the earliest races of Adams and Jefferson and through history, and look at what they called each other, and look at what was printed, and look at what was written. So, it can be tough and rough. The key is to have the tolerance to be able to work through it and not allow it to become polarizing, but, have a healthy debate out of it. And that's what I think we're trying to do, and we'll see what happens.
Well, I wish I could have said that ours is much gentler, but I can't. I can't lie so early in the morning. Question there.
You mean you can lie in the afternoon? Sorry about that.
No, we lie at London time.
Hello. Hi, Mr. Kerry. My question was with the ongoing war games and conflict in the South China Sea. So how can we see that the USA's pivot to Asia and India's Act East policy be made to go ahead together? Because we both have an interest in that region.
What was the first part of the question? I couldn't hear you. Hold the microphone. It gets a little distorted when it comes.
Sir, my question was that recently there has been a lot of war games and conflict in the South China Sea, in the Asia Pacific region. So both US and India have an interest in that region. So how can we cooperate to progress on that together?
Good question. Well, we are cooperating. We're cooperating in the Bay of Bengal. We're cooperating in our approach to the tribunal and our recognition of rule of law with respect to the South China Sea. We both understand that that decision is legally binding and the final decision, but we're also both interested not in fanning the flames of conflict, but rather trying to encourage the parties to resolve their disputes and claims through the legal process and through diplomacy. So I think we both are engaged in encouraging people to sit down, to negotiate, and try to reduce the tensions, because nobody is benefited by those tensions. And I hope that that's what can happen in the aftermath of the arbitration decision. But we're cooperating in the defense agreement that we just signed in Washington, the trade in goods that we are engaged in with you to try to help you modernize some of your capacities within the military, the exercises that we join into. All of this is the result, really, of the last few years of increased engagement between our countries. And I think, again, in the spirit of the candor with which we should talk here at a university particularly, but anyway, I like to try to engage in this discussion all the time. There was a period, and I can remember it. I came here in the 1990s, and I remember giving a speech at the time about nuclear policy, and we were discussing whether or not we might engage in cooperation in nuclear, and then even before that. And I remember meeting with then, later to become Prime Minister Singh, but he was then the finance minister. And we were talking about economic reforms, and this is before the economic reforms had even cut in India. So my history here goes back to a time when I can still remember the overhang of the Cold War and the tensions that existed because of India's policy of neutrality and the United States' sense that that was somehow walking away from us and from interests that we should share in common. And that overhang created mutual suspicion for a period of time. And it got in the way. That's what Prime Minister was referring to in his speech about the histories. So I must tell you, the conversation we had yesterday with your officials was completely devoid of any residual impact of that kind of attitude or sense. There wasn't even a remote feeling of it, that somebody was hiding it or pushing it aside. We have moved beyond that, way beyond that. And that, I think, is a very, very important benchmark with respect to the relationship that we can now develop going forward in these 70 different initiatives, 40 different task forces that are working together between our countries. And out of the research that we do between our universities, out of our exchange students and so forth, will come a deeper and deeper understanding, but also, I hope, some new partnerships in entrepreneurial activity, in solutions to problems that we face.
You'd also just mention your name and what you do, what class you are in. If
Okay,
you're studying
sir.
here.
So I am Deepika Deshwal from Delhi University. I am pursuing PhD from there. Yesterday I got able to take admission from there. It's my first day, sir, in PhD. So I want to ask one question from you. What are the ways to enforce Pakistan to desist from terrorism in India, Balochistan and Afghanistan? And how we can amicably resolve this with the help of India and America?
Well, we're working on it. It's a very good question, and I've been working on this issue very hard during the time that I was chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, as well as now as Secretary of State. And I have had many conversations and engagements with the President of Pakistan, not just with the Prime Minister. With the Prime Minister now, particularly, we have been talking about how to focus on the sanctuaries in the western part of the country, how to deal more effectively with the Haqqani network, deal with Lashkar-e-Taiba, deal with the hedge policy with respect to Afghanistan, and vice versa. We've also talked to Afghanistan. And President Ghani has been very bold and reached out, gone to visit, had conversations, and I must credit also Prime Minister Modi extended an invitation, and Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif came here for the inauguration. There have been communications. So that's the way to begin the process. You've got to work at it. And it is clear that Pakistan has work to do in order to push harder against its indigenous groups that are engaged in extremist terrorist activities. And they must work with us, and we've made this very clear, to help clear the sanctuaries of bad actors who are affecting not only the relationship between Pakistan and India, but also our ability to achieve peace and stability in Afghanistan. Now, in fairness, the Pakistanis have suffered greatly from this terrorism in their own country. More than 50,000 people have been killed. And when they do take actions, there's usually a pretty intense pushback, blowback, which raises the cost of doing this and makes it harder. So all of us need to be supportive and also understanding of how difficult it is to take it on step by step. I believe in the last months progress is being made and the Pakistanis are moving at a greater pace. And we all need to work hard to try to help each other to be able to get rid of this problem of these non-state actor disruptors who are the greatest challenge to the security of all of us in the world today.
The neighbor.
Thank you so much. My name is Stuti Banerjee. I'm a research fellow at the Indian Council of World Affairs. I have two questions for you, sir. The first is, you said that we have moved past our histories and we've gotten over our differences. I just wanted to know from you, are there any particular areas in which the US feels that India is not helping out or is not coming up to the mark for them? Are there any areas where you feel frustrated that we're not cooperating well? And my second question is, so you're coming from Russia.
One question per person.
Sorry, okay.
I'm not actually, I'm coming from Russia?
So I just wanted to know on the NATO exercises and your dialogue with your Russian counterpart. And
Yeah. Well, it was a good dialogue. And I'm very hopeful that if we can resolve a couple of other issues in some discussions that are actually taking place today, we have a chance of being able to advance a cessation of hostilities and change the dynamics in certain ways in Syria. I'm not going to go into them today. I'm not going to talk about it in detail. We want to make sure that we've done the homework and we've got the pieces lined up if we say something. But I'm hopeful. With respect to India, we're working so positively on so many things that it's really hard to find something where we say, well, India isn't engaged or moving. I think there are two things I would mention where I can hope India really will move faster, will be able to move faster. It's not that they're not trying. It's just I would love to see it be able to move faster. One is in the move away from coal, to be able to change the mix of energy. And unfortunately, India right now is the only country in the world that will be increasing coal use, not decreasing it, because of the current energy challenge you face. Now, in fairness, again, your minister is very capable, extremely thoughtful, very seized by this challenge. He doesn't want to be increasing, but he finds that the cost of some of the alternatives is very difficult, and that's a burden that falls on us. We need to help, and we will help with the world to try to help with the capital costs so that people can make better choices. And we need to work at this together. And the second thing is the regulatory structure, the overall ability to move decisions and move the process is clearly an internal challenge. We all face it. We face it in the United States. Bureaucracies are a challenge to all governments everywhere. And I would hope India would take that battle on, as we are also, because we have a common interest in trying to be able to move faster to deal with the challenges and make the decisions we need to make.
You have the microphone. Yes, go ahead.
Sir, I am Sagar. I am a computer science student in IIT Delhi itself. So first of all, it's a very pleasure asking you this question. It's related to the balance of power in this world. Okay. So what is happening is it is related to the issue in the South China Sea. Now, what you said that diplomacy and talks only work for nations who are actually listening to it. So after the decision passed by the International Court and China totally rejecting it, and since they don't want to hear any diplomacy and any dialogue, what do you propose that the US could actually go ahead and, are you in the favor of any sort of military action or not? Because China is constantly trying to get power over that region using its military itself. And just a related question to the power, is there a way for India to get a seat in the Security Council of the UN, permanent seat?
Well, there's a way, but it's complicated. And we're working on it. We've been supportive, obviously, and we are supportive of some reform. But it's going to take a while, and we're going to have to work through that. China did reject the process publicly, yes. But China has also said that it would like to see a bilateral negotiation or a negotiated resolution, and has indicated a willingness to engage. I think the Philippines sent an emissary to China to talk about the issue recently, and I was in China recently. We talked about it, and they indicated that they're prepared to sit down and have these negotiations. Now, in addition, I don't, there's no military solution to this. The United States and other countries are united in an alliance that respects freedom of navigation, the norms and standards of the law of the sea, and the rule of law with respect to access to the high seas and to the oceans. And I think that we've made it very, very clear that we have a primary interest. It's different. We're not claiming, we're not a claimant. We don't have core interests with respect to any of the borders or territorial claims and land, and we don't claim anything, and we haven't taken a position on anybody's claim. We want to support a code of conduct for the management of the South China Sea. We support diplomacy in an effort to try to resolve this with an understanding that there really is no, quote, military solution, but on the other hand, we will stand up for our rights, and we will stand with our allies, particularly where we have a defense agreement, in protecting that agreement and in protecting the rights of other nations with respect to their freedom of navigation and the legitimacy of a process under rule of law for the resolution of legitimate claims.
You have the microphone.
Sir, I'm Niyati. I'm an MBA student here at IIT Delhi. And my question to you is, well, recently, actually earlier this week, I read that you've visited 88 countries and that you've logged the most air miles out of any US Secretary of State. So I wanted to ask you, what were the most significant or moving experiences or things that you might have witnessed?
Well, it's a wonderful question, and I appreciate you for telling me how many countries I've been to, because I didn't know. I honestly am not counting countries or miles, for that matter. We're going where we think we need to go when we need to go, and trying to make things happen. It happens to be an extraordinarily challenging moment on this planet. We are seeing and this is by the way, this has to be the last question after this. I'm sorry about that, but we're running into a time crunch. But let me I want to take your question and just share a couple of thoughts with you, if I can, in general, as I answer it, and I will answer it. The world is moving in a profoundly transformative way because of a lot of things. Technology, for instance, is just phenomenal the way it is affecting lives. It is a huge benefit, but also a disruptor in terms of economies and lifestyles. And so suddenly, many things have changed because of it. The work that people do, the kind of work, how many people are needed to do certain kinds of work, all affected by robotics, artificial intelligence, machines. And so there are huge benefits from the technology because we're also curing diseases, producing new materials to build housing, advancing different sources of energy. I mean, I can run a long list of the upside benefits, but it also moves change at a pace that different places have difficulties keeping up with. In many places, there is a clash of culture or religion or local mores with modernity itself. And Different people react differently to that. In some places, people exploit it, and they exploit it with lies and distortions. Witness what you see as people define a great religion, Islam, in a way that doesn't reflect that religion. They steal it, they hijack it. And you can do that. Lies can move around the world in a nanosecond. Just tweet it. And boom, everybody's got a new fact that's not a fact at all. And there's a famous saying, I think it was President John Adams who said, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. And unfortunately, we're living in a world where even science is getting pushed aside at times and not properly and adequately respected. So this transformation is carrying with it many challenges. And the multiplicity of the media. I mean, look up there. There's an array of cameras up there which have an ability to transmit, all over the world in different ways. And people will take from these things, and many times what they want to. And so governing is harder. It is harder today to build consensus around an issue than it used to be. When I was growing up in America, back in a time when we actually had to hide under our desks to practice surviving a nuclear war. I mean, that's what we did in school. But we also had only four major television stations in the United States. So when I was a college student, the President of the United States, somebody from the press office would call the media, one or two networks, and say the President wants to talk to the nation tonight. They'd block out a half hour, and that was it. Everybody watched it because you had ABC, CBS, and NBC and public television, I think, if I'm correct back then. And so the next day at work, everybody would go to work and be talking around the water cooler or the coffee station or at the, boy, did you hear what the President said last night? What do you think about, what's happening in Vietnam or what's happening here or wherever? You'd have a conversation about it. That doesn't happen today. I mean, if a president wants to talk to the nation, he or she has to go out and fight to find all kinds of different venues, which is why the President of the United States goes on The View and goes on David Letterman and goes on The Night Show and goes on whatever, in order to be able to talk to people in segments. And it takes a lot longer to build it up, and you still have trouble getting people to be able to assimilate and process facts. So governing is harder, and it's true everywhere that governing is harder. And so when you say to me, what have I seen? I've seen this remarkable transformation taking place around the world. Now, I see the glass half full. I really do. Not because I'm Secretary of State and I'm sitting in front of you and be a nice thing for me to make you feel good. I see it half full. I see incredible positive changes taking place. Hundreds of millions of people being brought in from poverty into a rising, maybe not quite the middle class yet, but rising into the middle class. More and more people traveling around the world, more and more students studying in other countries and coming back to their nations and bringing different views, diseases being cured. We are on the brink of being able to have the first generation in Africa born free of AIDS because of what we have done with the PEPFAR and with our research and efforts to build health capacity. Look at what we did with Ebola. It was predicted that 1 million people were going to die by Christmas of last year. But no, nations came together, including India and China and Japan and others, France, Britain, and we worked together, and that never happened. We managed to curb the disease. You look at what we're doing countering terrorism around the world today. It may not seem that way, because we see a suicide vest explosion and we see 80 people killed or 100 killed in an event. But the fact is that we are living in a century in which far, far fewer people are being killed in violence and in war than were killed in the last century. And just think about that. Russia alone lost 30 million people in the course of World War II, and you look at 6 million Jews cruelly exterminated in the course of the Holocaust, and you run these massive numbers of deaths. World War I, an entire generation lost in Europe and so forth. So we have to look at this and say, we're making progress. We understand what infrastructure can do. We understand how we, if we make the right choices, can build ways for people to get from here to there faster and better and easier and more comfortably. We can sell goods all over the world. It is changing. And the truth is, there are still tens of millions of people, hundreds of millions of people to be brought in from poverty, houses to be built, hospitals to be built, doctors to be created, unbelievable amounts of construction to build the infrastructure that brings Africa and South Asia and various parts of the world into modernity. And as we do that, if we do it in a context of freedom of choice and greater education and people being able to make choices for themselves and have the freedom to govern, and governance gets better, believe me, we're going to solve these problems. So I see things moving in that direction despite the hurdles and the problems and the challenges along the way. And nobody ever said it was going to be easy. But we're making progress, no question in my mind. And I've seen, you asked me some of the most moving things I've seen are kids in a refugee camp in Jordan who are refugees from Syria, sitting at a desk, given a computer, working at that computer, struggling and saying, I want to be a doctor, and being able to say that without ever having been inside of a hospital or seen anything that remotely said it. Dreams being lived out. That's what life is about. And I think if we continue to work together to adhere to our fundamental values and principles and keep driving in that direction, the basic human spirit is a spirit that has survival built into it, but also has this capacity to dream. And India and the United States are blessed to have a huge sharing of that dream. And so I think we just keep working and moving in the same direction and stay optimistic and stay on track, and we're going to get where we want to go. All right? Thank you all very, very much. Great to be with you.
In fact, I was slipped a piece of paper saying we can allow one more question if you can. That's it?
I apologize. I hate to do that, folks, but unfortunately, I have a schedule.
No, you go ahead. We'll not allow any more questions, but I'll ask a concluding question, misuse my position here. You mentioned the need for nations to deal with their dangers away from their shores. What do we do when our dangers are not away from our shores, are next door to us, and the two organizations you named with Al-Qaeda and Daesh, that is Jaish-e-Mohammed and Lashkar-e-Toiba, as terrorist organizations, when their chiefs hold press conferences, appear on TV discussions every evening in Pakistan, the irritation and anger that it causes in India, how do we deal with that?
Well, you deal with that by providing a better alternative. And I'm not kidding about that. Keep showing what your society can do. Keep building, keep growing, keep educating, keep doing the things that you're doing. Because their philosophy is totally nihilistic, empty, devoid of any hope. Have you ever heard them talk about, they want to shut schools, not open them. They want to not allow you to think, not invite you to think. So this is not that hard. You've just got to, go out there and do the things I talked about making your society work better. Move your economy. Do your regulatory reforms. Make things happen, and so help me, you'll provide the alternative, and any young person, as long, there are masses of young people in the world who need education. And if we will focus on the people who need the education and provide opportunity and make our economies work to their full potential, these people will become the detritus of history. And that's what we have to make them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary.